Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Giorgia, DGA's showroom manager, and I would like to welcome you all to the first meeting of our Light Addicted tables for 2024. We have a very interesting schedule for this year, starting with Carlo and Valeria from Foster+Partners, and they will talk to us about the design process. So I hope you enjoy, and talk to you later.
Allora, eccoci qua. Io parlerò in italiano perché il mio inglese è abbastanza cattivo. Grazie a Carlo e Valeria per aver accettato il nostro invito. Un grande onore avervi qua al nostro primo tavolo del 24. Parleranno della luce dei progetti che si sviluppano per la Foster Associati e come il processo si integra con tutte le varie funzioni che ci sono all'interno dello studio, dagli architetti, agli ingegneri, al sustainability manager, qualcosa del genere. E poi se avete delle domande da fare, ben accette. In italiano, nessun problema, non chiediamo in inglese. Prego.
Grazie mille, grazie. So, good evening everyone. We are pleased to be here tonight talking to all of you about architectural lighting in integrated design process. We would like to provide a special mention to our host tonight, so Andrea and DGA and Lisa particularly. And we would like to deliver this talk to you in English tonight, just to facilitate our colleagues overseas to be able to watch the talk later on after the recording, and just having the possibility of share with us our work and the insights of our world. So just a brief understanding of what we're talking about in the next half an hour or so, and just a little index and going through the various topics. Now, we will just have a touch base on who we are and an understanding of our broader team, both in terms of lighting and in terms of architectural practice. We will dive deep into the conversation about integrated design, so what it is integrated design and what it is for us integrated design. We'll touch base on the role of architectural lighting within the integrated design world and within the integrated design process. And then we'll touch base on an interesting insight about the differences of an integrated lighting design group against an architectural lighting, an external lighting consultant that might collaborate on the project with the architects. We will highlight the key item, so that coordination is key for a good functioning of the project and a smooth outcome of the design. And then we will just go through some communication technique that we have developed and that we will develop in future within the practice and with different disciplines. So we are here today, and he's Carlo Pedata. He's my colleague in Foster's, and he has joined the company about 7 years ago.
And she's Valeria. She worked with me in the last 6 years. And both of us, we have a background in architecture, but we have a big passion in lighting. And I want to give you like an overview about our team. We are about 14 people just working in lighting. This one is a nice picture we took in the Pompidou during the Norman exhibition. There was a wall full of names of all the people that collaborated with Norman in the last 6 years. So we are just pointing our name. And we are part of a bigger group that is called environmental engineering. Environmental engineering is not only lighting, it's lighting, mechanical, fire protection, electrical, hydraulic, and VT, vertical transportation. And this group is a part of Foster+Partners wider group. Just to give you an idea about the office, we have a headquarters in London, but we have other offices spread around the world, and plus other small offices that are site office. This one is just to give you an idea about the different time zone that we jump from Los Angeles to Sydney, and this one is impacting also on our work. Sometimes you have a call early morning with Hong Kong office, and after you end up late night to have a call with San Francisco office.
So a brief introduction then, and then we'd like to dive deep into the topic of what we are talking about when we talk about integrated design. Now, can you imagine like sitting together in a big room and working all together with a multidisciplinary team of people? That people could cover different specialization and special knowledge, going from the energy modeler to the BIM specialist to the industrial designer and so on. And this is exactly what happens in the beginning and the seed of how an integrated design process works. So the need of having different people, a different background, a different discipline, working hand to hand together, just covering different specialties and sitting down in a room to develop the project further on. So this is exactly what happens, and we know and we are aware that the core discipline of the practice is architecture, but all the competencies create a joint venture, so all together within the technology and research group, the industrial design team, the interior team, and the architectural team, and so on. We just work hand in hand for the end goal, which is actually a successful outcome of a project. Now, what we have noticed throughout the year is that an integrated design is actually a non-linear process. In fact, we would define it an iterative, not linear process. That means that actually, when we start the project and then we end up for completion and we provide we give the project in use, the workflow is not linear. In fact, it's almost circular, because it means having continuous iteration back and forward, the core ideas of the design. And while we go through the projects that might be a month or years long, then we might go back to the beginning and ask ourselves, why is this happening? And then change throughout the time the outcome of our intentions. That's why we would like to dive deep into this and start understanding what is our specific role as architectural lighting designer within an integrated design group and an multidisciplinary team against what could be the role of an external lighting consultant. Now, as an example, let's think about the architectural timeline of a project. So we all know that in principle, the timeline of a project is very linear. In fact, it does start from the strategic definition to end up with the handover and the use of the project. And we all know that it goes through various phases, touch basing from preparation and brief, spatial coordination, technical design, manufacturing and construction, and so on. Now, when working as an independent architectural lighting consultancy that Carlo and I both worked in the past prior to joining foster+partners, the contractual agreement might be more linear. So we might go from the start, from a beginning, with a more organized, scheduled, and with a clear understanding of how much time we're going to spend on the project, how much resources we're going to use for the project, and what are the submittals and the deliverables for it. And so that makes it very clear, and interactions become very contractual in that sense. However, when we look at the past and when we look how we work now and we look at our integrated architectural design, this process stops becoming linear, and it's actually a continuous iteration of back and forward of different stages of the project. We might find ourselves going back to the concept very often while we are in technical design because of the understanding that what we're doing is not the best solution. So this is a process that is very fluid, and it does open door to new solutions and to new innovation. Because as a practice and as a process, we do really believe that working hand in hand, instead of fighting other disciplines, can lead us to better solution, essentially, and better integrated solution, and could help us to test new ideas. So that makes this particular process an interesting hub of innovation.
And now let's have a look to the scale of foster+partner and us inside foster+partner. If you think foster+partner is an office with 2,000 employees, and we are only 12. So as you can see in the graphic, we are almost 1%, even less than the entire worker. Plus, if we add to us also the environmental team or the engineering, we can arrive to 6-7% of the worker. Against, we have like almost 50% of is the green color, is the architect. That in our office we have 6 studios of architects. And you can see on the left side in blue is all the support team. We can say that in our office we are divided in half. Half of the people in the office is architect, and half of it is a support team for architect. In total, we got almost 40 different teams just for support. This one is one of the key elements for our office, that you can always ask for help in any project. So, because we are a small part of the company, we have different types of agreement and different types of approach project. We have like a appointed project where it's like more traditional way. We have a contract with the client, we have deliverable, and in this case, we have like we can deliver everything, and after we have support. In support, it's more ad hoc solution. It's sometimes the architect maybe needs some help to review a package of drawing, or maybe need some concept idea for a competition. In this case, we have just we give just a small help to them, and it's agree like with a phone call how much time we will spend with them, and we always, as a company, we always try to help to get new project, a new idea. So here it's highlighted a bit what we do as appointed project. So we do almost all the stage. We can help with the markups, mock-ups, site survey, and we can do from the beginning to the end of the project. Instead, with the support, it's more about small amount of time that we allow us to develop a new concept or some help. After, we are very lucky because the office is wide enough and big that we can work so in a big variety of projects, and we go from small scale to big scale. And here it's just a few pictures of the project we work on. We go from high-rise to retail to health, education and culture. We go also transport, master plan. And this one is just to give you an idea how the small team of 12 people need to move from a tiny project to a huge master plan.
So to be able to go through this complicated but interesting world, we really feel that collaboration is key. So approaching all of that with an open-minded and being able to be very resilient through tasks. So this is just an inside of our campus. So the colored buildings are foster+partners building. This might be what happens in terms of logistic in a typical day. So we go from building to building, touch basing. So we might start our day and going for a meeting to the architectural team in the green building, and then moving to the magenta building, meeting the beam specialist, and then moving the model shop, then going to the blue one.
Yeah, it's very healthy.
So exactly.
a lot of steps.
There's a lot of working, but also a lot of working behind, which hopefully helps us like keeping fit. But yes, so this is just how it starts, collaboration across the campus. So it's really agile. Like there's a lot of movement, the implication of a lot of movements for that. And this is just an interesting insight, like on an archive picture of what was the beginning of the practice with Lord Foster sitting down with his first collaborators. And we still feel that it's very, very important moving out from our screens and just sitting down with people and talking, again, with an open-minded, through media that are more classical, like using, for example, 3D models or using like sketches on talking in front of papers and so on. And then elaborating all of that in front of screens. So we really believe in the value of communication, informal communication, and then verbal and face-to-face communication. And so at all levels and at all stages, people are encouraged to present, and we really feel that this means being heard throughout the project and being able also to bring in innovative ideas in the project as well. So as an insight of an integrated design process, this is just a picture of a little mock-up that we did in our team in the past. And this could be like a workshop that happens to be every day. We do these integrated design workshops in projects where we all sit together and discuss about various disciplines with the end goal. So you might have the architect, as indicated, or various of them generally, and then the interior designer providing insights about the material selection. And then, very importantly as well, the lighting designer being there, but being able to communicate straight away on a daily basis about materials, about reflections, about pattern, colors, tone, and textures. And then having the environmental engineer present and saying their word about how much daylight and how the daylight impacts inside the building, and communicating with the architectural team about the impact of daylight in their facade design, for example, and how should that change depending on the thermal analysis. And the electrical engineer, which is welcomed in the meetings as well, providing their insight about voltage, about systems, about control, and about I don't know, control panels, selection of panels, and so on, and with their insight about
Driver
like
location.
cabling, location, and so on. And ending, for example, there could be always there the fire protection engineer that like it provides health and safety communication about the structure of how we're doing things. And that really, really helps understanding, for example, what's happening in the ceiling, like what kind of ceiling devices we're placing, how are we placing them, are they in the right location, do we need to make space in terms of lighting to other devices that might be more important than us in that particular instance because of a matter of health and safety, for example. So all the discipline being at the same level in a horizontal, not hierarchical process, with people really listen to each other, and that's very important. And all of this is possible within the BEAM world. So we do use to share models. We do have all the disciplines action on the model, and we action on the model live, meaning that once the architectural model is more or less set, then we see live what the interior designers are doing, what kind of furniture they put in, and what
mechanical as well.
Yeah, where the FCU units are located, where the pipes and ventilation are going, and that helps us coordinating, like as a day-to-day basis, what our devices are doing. Are there any clashes? Are we putting things in the right order, and so on. Touch basing about that, we also wanted to have an insight on the presence and the very strict collaboration that as lighting designer, it would be important to have with people that work on environmental design. In fact, this discipline is really precious because they provide insight about environmental benefits in terms of massing and in terms of orientation, and also in terms of daylight impact. And what does that mean? That means that understanding the presence of daylight and the penetration of the light throughout the floor, we can also understand how we can balance that with artificial lighting and where is needed to have presence detectors and what kind of percentage, for example, we should implement about artificial lighting, and when do we need the artificial lighting to be switched on. And that's also really important to understand about thermal analysis and solar radiation. And so when we think about control, for example, and control strategy and the positioning of control paneling, we don't just think about lighting, we always think together and sit down on the table with disciplines to understand what do we need to put on the control panel, for example, Lutron control panel. We might put together temperature, blinds, control blind. So it's really like an open-minded integrated process that helps achieving the next level. So just a little bit of insight of a project that we worked on where the daylight impact was really balanced, and it provided information on the strategic location of atria, for example, how to locate the room inside the building, where is more important to have the offices, for example, so they can benefit about daylight, and where can we put common areas or secondary services like toilets or staircase and so on. And this is all done through daylight analysis.
Okay, now so let's move on to the next topic that is more about communication. After, like, the key is also how do we communicate with architect or other discipline. So we need to develop some technique in a way that we are able to communicate effective and quickly. One of the first technique that we use is like very traditional. Every studio of design do that. Is just start to sketch. Just to receive, the important thing is sketch is very quick and you receive immediately some feedback. Just what we do, an example in our office, generally what we receive from the architect is just a quick view in Escape. That is a software that we use widely in the office. And after from Escape, we just trace over on top, and this way we have like a perspective. We add what we think that is right for the project. In this case, we add some post, we add some applied for the structure. But this one, it's not all about perspective. Maybe you can do the same with the section. That this one can help, for example, for landscape, just to give like some quick idea and receive a feedback. Or maybe even a sketch detail. This is very important that they receive immediately this kind of information. This way, they start to think how to integrate it. Before they start to think about to give the ceiling, they know the depth, how many components they need to have a downlight in the ceiling. After we have also developed in the past years another technique that we call light mix. This one involves the use of 3D Max and V-Ray or other software. This one is very powerful because it gives an ultra-realistic image of your space, and also give like the flexibility to change in post-production from daytime to nighttime or play with different layers. This one is possible in our office just because we are in one big server and we share all the technical equipment, all the computer, we have render farm, and also we work in the same software package that help us to build up the scene. In this case, just to give you an idea, the architect take charge of the 3D model. After we have a meeting, we start with sketch, few ideas, and after there is a parallel. In parallel, the architect develop like all the material to the scene. In the meantime, our team is starting to introduce lights and ice file in the software, and we have like the final result. This kind of workflow take us around 1 week, and we are able to speed up this only because we work in the same building with the same people, and we are almost in one big campus. Just to give you an idea what is capable the software, we can play with the layer, switch on and switch off different layer, and this one is very powerful during a presentation. Also because people that don't understand anything about lighting can understand what's happening in the room, and you can engage them to give you feedback. Just to give like an idea of the software, generally the viewport, it looks like that one. You have like your render, and after on the right side, you have a kind of a panel that looks like a little bit Lutron panel, where you have all the different layers that you can play with, and you can dim down, switch on, and switch off layer.
Yeah, and another technique that it's broadly used to help with integrated design is obviously mockup, which we are all familiar with. We are lucky enough to be able to have use of small-scale mockup and big-scale mockup as well. This is just a picture of Carlo and myself a few years ago now, that we had an impromptu review with some senior partners in the practice, and with the help and the possibility of having the model shop, we managed to have a 3D printed model and to make it a little bit more collaborative using fiber optics. So that was a way that was improvised at the time, but we actually found it being very, very engaging for both clients and architects, because they could also contribute and play with light as well. So understanding what is the impact of light if I put it in this position or in that position, and how does that mean in terms of how the building reacts to that. And that's very helpful. And it makes it playful, but also it provides ownership to the architects that are with us in that occasion to have an understanding of what the light is doing and how the building is reacting to that. So this is just another two picture of the building. We have, in a very rude way, fixed with Patafix, fixed the light on the model, and then just managed to show you and to get an approval, essentially, of a concept design from the client. And this is the outcome of the completed project, which obviously went through a number of various iterations, but also through the use of check-in softwares and all the integrated process that we've just talked about. And also talking about small-scale mock-ups, this is another interesting one. This is Carlo with one of our partners, James, and as well, they were looking for actually an idea about a special design and some feature within this building. The building has a...
Yeah, they don't know what they want.
They didn't really know what they want,
They asked to me, say, can you come over? We have this fantastic staircase, but we don't know how to lit up in a proper way to emphasize it. So I bring like the fiber optic with me and say, okay, let's go in the dark room, let's play a bit, let's find which effect you like, and after we can replicate. This one is like some zoom in that we did, and after this one is the final result. That is quite similar to what we was playing with the little model. And after, we are quite lucky because in our campus we got enough space to host one-to-one mock-up. This one, for example, is quite interesting mock-up. In this case, we play a bit with the mirror and light. And for this project, we didn't know where to place the light because which height, which distance from the mirror we want to place the light to have a specific effect. So we went in our car park and with the help of someone to hold the light up, the structure up of the mirror one, we test different distance. So you can see that even with the different distance, you have different effect. So like when you are close by the structure, you got a very sharp edge and also very defined light. Instead, when you are like from a certain distance, in this case it was more than 10 meters, you got like kind of a caustic effect that is generated by the aluminum, and the client really liked the caustic effect. So this one, at the end of the project, we decided to have all the light at a certain distance. It was like around 10 to 12 meters. This one is another way to be creative in our campus. Like was a tower, we need to study how to lit up the columns. So like we measured the columns in one of our buildings that was almost the right dimension to have one to shoot mock-up, and we play a bit with it. What is very nice about this is that it was done in the campus, so everyone can give an opinion. It was easy to everyone to come over, all the architects, partner come and see and decide what they want to do with the project. So you involve them quite close to the lighting, and it's quite playful, so it's very engaging. And this one is like a massive mock-up that is done not in our campus, but we don't have space to host this one. It was a little bit outside London. And in this case, Valeria and Carolina, they was testing some uplight, especially how to lit up the facade and which distance you need to give to the uplight. And this one was during like a client presentation. So even the client was there and was understanding what's happening when you move light or you have different optic. And we want to close with this one is like one of the most interesting mock-up we did with our material research library. So there was like a big light fixture. In this case, we test different kind of material collaboration with them to see which one reacts better with light and with the effect that you want to achieve. And you can see in the image, we have like different people from different teams just judging which one was the best. And grazie per l'attenzione.
Grazie.
Bene. Grazie mille della presentazione, bellissima. Allora, design process integrato.
Sì.
Facendo il paragone con l'Italia, ahimè viene da dire che non è molto integrato qui, è molto, anzi abbastanza complicato integrare forse i vari rapporti. Magari i colleghi lighting magari mi correggeranno se sbaglio, ma è sempre una rincorsa del lighting, no? Che poi arriva sempre all'ultimo o al penultimo, mentre voi partite sostanzialmente dalla stessa riga, dalla stessa linea, partite tutti insieme e fate un processo unico per arrivare al progetto. Qui si fa tutto insieme, poi chiamano il lighting a risolvere i problemi che a volte non si possono risolvere. Una bella fortuna la vostra, comunque. Era una considerazione, semplicemente non era una domanda, era semplicemente una considerazione.
Noi ci rendiamo conto perché tra l'altro non credo che sia l'Italia o non Italia, sia Carlo che io abbiamo lavorato in studi di lighting, esclusivamente di lighting, quindi indipendenti, e è un po' quello che trattavamo prima, la differenza e la possibilità di partire dall'inizio, e quindi e che succede anche un po' che poi per farci spazio come disciplina dobbiamo un po' sgomitare e trovare il nostro spazio, e quindi questo ovviamente porta dei tempi più limitati, più difficoltà nell'inserimento, quando già tutte le strutture nel soffitto sono state allineate, tracciate e bisogna rifarsi. La differenza e la fortuna che non è stata immediata, perché il team di lighting è molto giovane,
sì.
è partito praticamente
Abbiamo più o meno
concomitanza,
10 anni di vita.
Sì, ma meno di 10 anni di vita, e abbiamo molto spinto per far succedere questo, e quindi abbiamo una gerarchia per esempio di elementi di servizi che inseriamo all'interno del progetto. La gerarchia parte da gli sprinkler, sprinkler in italiano mi sfugge, sprinkler, perché chiaramente dettano, insomma, offrono a tutti la possibilità di rendere un ambiente safe, e poi viene il lighting perché è la parte che è più visibile, ma è stato un processo lungo ed non è stato immediato, e abbiamo lavorato dal punto di vista proprio di educativo con i nostri architetti per far capire che...
Sì, poi molti progetti, non è che tutti i progetti che facciamo iniziano sulla stessa linea, a volte noi iniziamo come supporto, cioè che non c'è un lighting designer, perché noi siamo in house, quindi ci possono chiamare tranquillamente, quindi a volte iniziamo con un concept che poi si trasforma in un vero e proprio progetto, perché il cliente vede che la figura del lighting è importante per quel progetto, cioè vede che c'è qualcosa che può dare,
che dà un impatto,
che ha un impatto, e quindi molto spesso noi iniziamo come supporto interno e poi si trasforma in un vero e proprio progetto.
Okay. Beh, ciao a tutti, ci conosciamo con entrambi.
Buonasera.
Io sono Marinella Patetta, e molto interessante la presentazione, e ovviamente è una, come dire, una realtà significativa, importante, anche non così comune ovviamente per la dimensione, mi sembra che da un lato rispecchia un po' il processo, cioè questo fatto di aver avviato un processo di sensibilizzazione anche interno, in qualche modo rispecchia un po' il percorso che questa professione, quella del lighting designer, sta facendo e sta cercando appunto di farsi spazio, diciamo, insomma, siccome personalmente mi occupo di questa cosa da tanto tempo e sono già cambiate tante cose, però quindi è interessante che anche all'interno, diciamo, di una realtà di progettazione così complessa, insomma, ci sia anche lì, avete dovuto, insomma, un po' appunto farvi spazio. Per certi versi quello che ha detto Andrea è verissimo, purtroppo succede, magari io ho delle esperienze che sono un po' più, diciamo, simili, no? Cioè ho la fortuna di lavorare su progetti all'interno dei quali si parte allineati, cioè si parte dal concept, quindi quello che voi avete espresso, diciamo, molto bene, è anche il fatto che non sia un processo lineare. Questo, diciamo, con insomma gli architetti o i clienti più sensibili un po' sta succedendo, succede anche con, diciamo, i lighting, nella relazione con il lighting designer indipendente, un po' più complicato perché ovviamente non sono tutti nello stesso campus, no? E quindi magari ci sono anche, si tirano un po' da punti di vista diversi, però diciamo questo è sicuramente, diciamo, la modalità ottimale che dovrebbe diciamo avvenire, cioè partire nello stesso momento, perché il processo è un processo che non è lineare, parti da un concept, poi devi tornare indietro, eccetera. Quindi questa è questo racconto mi sembra molto interessante all'interno di questa struttura, però credo rispecchia un po' quello che dovrebbe essere il processo collaborativo, soprattutto adesso con lo sviluppo dei progetti in BIM, eccetera, eccetera. Scusate, faccio una domanda, ma quindi Foster però collabora anche con altri, cioè nel momento in cui ci sono altri lighting, voi avete anche una relazione con loro, una relazione felice?
Sì,
Scusate,
sì.
una curiosità.
Sì, dipende, ovviamente dipende dal progetto, dalla scala di progetti e anche dalle fasi del progetto. Nella maggior parte dei casi direi che il progettista illuminotecnico subentra a volte quando Foster ha un local architect oppure quindi un local lighting designer, ma come Carlo spiegava siamo l'1% e quindi sappiamo che Foster, esatto, che Foster o i clienti stessi per esperienze già vissute in precedenza, positive esperienze con dei lighting designer, desiderano invece avere i loro lighting designer, o noi stessi abbiamo dei gruppi appunto che riferiscono a esperienze precedenti e continuano ad avere dei lighting designer all'interno. Quindi certe volte il nostro ruolo è semplicemente di, per esempio, diciamo, supervisionare che quello che viene
o agevolare una comunicazione,
o agevolare e che sia allineato un po' con gli standard che noi conosciamo lavorando lì all'interno, e che la comunicazione sia bilaterale, quindi in entrambi i sensi, diciamo, facilitare, come ha detto lei.
Per esempio, al momento sto lavorando su un progetto di una torre che noi non riuscivamo a fare il progetto perché avevamo preso troppi progetti prima, quindi come risorse non coprivamo. Quindi abbiamo chiesto proprio agli architetti, guarda, non ce la facciamo, ti possiamo dare una mano a seguire il lighting consultant esterno, cioè che abbiamo dei meeting regolari con loro, in modo che gli spiego anche cosa vogliono, perché alla fine, stando nel campus e lavorando sempre con le stesse persone, inizi a capire il loro taste, cioè inizi a vedere cosa gli piace e cosa no, e gli diamo una mano, in modo per agevolare anche, però è un rapporto molto sereno. Sì.
È una collaborazione.
Alla fine non è che ci pestiamo i piedi, alla fine è un supporto che ci danno.
Buonasera a tutti, io
Buonasera.
sono Fabio Marcomin di Elvar, complimenti per la presentazione.
Grazie.
Ero curioso di capire all'interno di Foster, o anche solo per voi due, come il tema della sostenibilità, quindi tutti i temi della ISG, della CSRD e quant'altro, in che modo in Foster affrontate questo tema, se ne siete come progettisti inseriti in questa struttura, perché ovviamente è un tema molto caldo e, come diceva Marinella, la professionalità del lighting designer è totalmente cambiata, è molto più aperta a 360 gradi. Grazie.
Grazie per la domanda interessante. La sostenibilità in generale è uno dei core values all'interno della practice, quindi viene toccata in aree differenti come lighting designer dal punto di vista della coscienza progettuale, ma anche collaborando con altre discipline. All'interno di tutti i progetti noi abbiamo delle persone che si occupano dei sustainability code e del rispetto dei sustainability code, quindi è un team specifico che tra l'altro risiede nel nostro dipartimento, che a livello pratico ci aiutano per esempio a definire quali sono i limiti della power consumption, quindi lighting power density, e quindi quanto power possiamo utilizzare all'interno del progetto, per esempio.
Questo inizia proprio all'inizio del progetto. Prima che, giusto per farti dare un'idea, la power consumption ci arriva prima che non iniziamo a fare il concept.
A volte sì, in concept o già
in concept già ci arriva, quindi iniziamo già a pensare come fare in modo che le luci oppure la strategia che stiamo utilizzando non impatti. Per esempio in alcuni progetti non proponiamo lineari, giusto perché se proponi lineari e sai che i nostri ingegneri hanno calcolato che tu non devi avere più di un tot di watt al metro quadrato, è impossibile.
Oppure per esempio dal punto di vista della sostenibilità, io al momento sto sviluppando un progetto che è fuori Londra e si trova in una zona riservata, diciamo una riserva naturale, dove c'è una presenza molto ampia di, insomma, flora e fauna locale, e quindi c'è stato fatto uno studio molto approfondito con i nostri ecologisti che si trovano all'interno dello studio per tutta una svariata ampia gamma di tematiche, dall'uso delle temperature di colore all'uso dei beam angle. Questo è un argomento che sta diventando sempre più, diciamo, caldo per il rispetto del dark skies, per esempio, no? E quindi quello anche dal punto di vista della sostenibilità, TM66, quindi nuovi codici che vengono adesso utilizzati in UK per la circular economy, e quindi il riuso di determinate parti dei fitting, e quindi cercare di utilizzare dei fornitori che siano nel rispetto dei nuovi codici della circular economy.
E poi molto spesso viene anche dal cliente l'input. Devo dire la verità, negli ultimi anni i clienti si stanno evolvendo, cioè sono loro che dettano degli input e quindi ci danno degli standard abbastanza alti da rispettare, che lo usano alcuni developer come marketing per sviluppare l'edificio, quindi per il branding, quindi qualcosa si sta muovendo, le persone si stanno iniziando ad educare a proposito.
Sì. poi solitamente quasi tutti i progetti su cui lavoriamo, specialmente quelli molto grandi, sono tutti sotto gli standard,
sì,
devono
BRIAM,
raggiungere il LEED,
LEED,
Platinum, BRIAM Platinum, e quindi tutte le discipline devono collaborare e ci rifacciamo ai crediti delle discipline imposti, diciamo, anche. Spero che la risposta sia stata esaustiva.
Direi di sì. Altre?
Comunque non deve essere solo scenografia, ma anche benessere della visione che si ha.
Certo.
Sì. No, questo qua abbiamo, infatti in molti progetti, quello là che vi ho mostrato, che cambiava durante la giornata tutto lo store, alla fine l'utente finale, cioè il cliente, non ha quell'esperienza perché non spende tutta la giornata nello store, finché non è un malato del prodotto. Quindi quello, l'unico che veramente ha l'esperienza di vederlo come cambia durante il giorno e quindi avere tutti i benefici non è l'utente finale, ma è il lavoratore che sta lì, che di solito non viene mai nemmeno considerato. In quel caso lì è lui che ha più benefici da spendere, che lui spende 8-10 ore in quel posto.
Esatto. Poi in riferimento a questo, per esempio, ultimamente sempre un progetto che sto sviluppando è un progetto di healthcare e di una clinica, la cui prima clinica è già esistente a Los Angeles e quindi è stato fatto un questionario all'inizio per quanto riguarda tantissimi ambiti dal punto di vista del comfort termico, del lighting e per come si sentono i ricercatori che lavorano lì, per come si sentono i pazienti che devono utilizzare la clinica, quindi cercare di comprendere quali possono essere i valori che devono essere migliorati e che cosa invece funziona e può essere abbracciato dai progetti già esistenti senza, diciamo, necessariamente forzare l'innovazione, ecco.
Mi sembrano soddisfatti, spero di sì, insomma. Bene, allora ringraziamo Carlo e Valeria per il bellissimo racconto, molta invidia. E ci vediamo tra un mesetto circa con un altro appuntamento, sempre con DGA, sempre un lighting table. Ospite non ve lo svelo perché lo racconteremo dopo sui social, sui post, con Lisa faremo un po' di campagne, per cui siete tutti invitati circa un mese, tenetevi pronti. Grazie a tutti. Grazie. E ci vediamo, ultimissima cosa, ci vediamo in showroom per un calice offerto da DGA. Grazie.